In today's podcast, I am joined by racing expert Quentin Franks. Welcome to the podcast, Quentin. How are you doing?
I'm good, Pete. How are you?
Very good, very good. Looking forward to a good chat today with yourself. I know you're a real racing guru. You go on a few other podcasts as one of their judges. But for those people who've never heard from you, do you want to give some introductions, explain what it is you do and your work within the betting space?
Well, I'm Quentin Franks. I bet on horses for a living. I'm also a tipster. Main income comes from betting on horses. I also do a bit of green book trading that's based on form study and the analysis I do throughout the day. Been in the tipping space for the last 8 years and professional punter for the last just over a decade now. That's me.
Yeah, so betting takes up is your full-time gig, I suppose, in some way.
Yeah, betting's my full-time gig. That's 90% of my income. That pays the bills, keeps a roof on my head, and keeps the wife happy.
Which is the most important thing, of course. So when you say, actually, let's ask you about that, 90% of your income, how does it break down in terms of, the betting from the tipping side? We'll get into the tipping service in time, but in terms of what pays the bills the most?
Oh, it's definitely the betting side of things. It runs alongside the tipping side of things. Everything I tip, I back. But then there's other opportunities, as you well know, that come up throughout the day, whether a price has drifted to something that I perceive to be value, and then we'll have money on that. But it's too late for something to be sent out to my clients. So, just betting. And then there's the trading side of thing, which comes under the betting umbrella, if you will. Do a lot of green book trading, bonds markets, Betfair. So basically horses I don't fancy in a market that I suspect will drift. I'll quite happily lay them and then try and green up a book later in the day when they drift for a price that I perceive to be the right price. Some would say that's negative EV, but mentally it keeps me on par knowing that there's something coming in all the time.
Yeah, and that's obviously really important as a professional where you rely on your income and that, you can lock in that profit versus, and at the same time, you've obviously got bets going on that you don't trade out and you don't green up, whereby, there can be that variance. And we've seen that. I've seen that as someone who's, evaluated your service over time. I think recently you tipped up a 50-1 horse that I think started at 14 and then was done in a photo. And, that doesn't pay the bills as impressive as it is.
No, it doesn't, does it? And variance it can work for you, it can work against you. Like I'm on a rotten 3-month run, but I know it happens. I've had short head defeats, big prices, chinned at 101. So variances, they can be a killer sometimes, but that's why I like to tick over in the background with the trading side of things, just to make sure there's something coming in, despite knowing long term it's slightly negative EV greening up lays that I've placed.
Yeah, because we're always told as shrewd bettors never to cash out, obviously, and take the bookmakers' options to cash out. But obviously, trading is the better way to cash out and to lock in that profit. So that absolutely makes sense. So let's talk about that journey then to where you are now. And, what was it? Let's start off at the beginning, if you like. And what is it that introduced you to betting and obviously into racing, which is, I believe, your main passion?
Yep, it's kind of like most punters, I'd say. My old man was a punter. He wasn't a very good one, but he liked to bet on the horse racing. The horse racing was on the TV throughout the big festivals, Channel 4 racing on a Saturday afternoon. I kind of got into watching it then. You start normally with your Grand National bets, your Royal Ascot bets, and then all of a sudden you're 13, you're skipping off school to spend the afternoons watching Cheltenham and Royal Ascot. It kind of gradually grew through that. I used to go football. I used to follow Crystal Palace a fair bit up and down the country. The people I used to go with, they were slightly older and they would place their football accumulators. So I kind of got into it through that stage, placing your football accumulators and then gradually placing bigger bets. And that's kind of how it took off. You win and then you want to know more because you want to keep on winning. So you try and teach yourself.
Yeah. Okay. And what is it that you were able to learn and the skills you've been able to develop to actually turn a profit?
Well, I wasn't turning a profit during my teenage years, but I was just eager to learn how you used to see adverts in the racing posts with tipsters that they've got this good thing, and you just wanted to learn how to beat the game, essentially. I'm pretty much a self-taught punter. I didn't really have any advice from others. I kind of followed a few tipping columns and Hugh Taylor and read his insights and saw what other people were doing that are showing a profit or their services are showing a profit, and just wanted to learn and set out on my own path to do it myself.
Yeah. So, and how long did that take you? Obviously, you've been doing this a while now, but at what point did it become, well, from making a loss, breaking even, turning a profit, and then making enough to live off, if you like?
Well, it kind of started 16. I went pro when I was 20. I had a job. I got screwed over 1 month on a bonus and decided, you know what, I can beat the game, and decided to pick up and go pro. My bankroll wasn't enough by any means, but it was at a stage where I had a fair few accounts and thought I was God because I could beat overnight prices. As you and me, yeah, exactly. As you and me know, that's not sustainable long term. But I picked up, realised that they couldn't be beaten. The accounts wouldn't last as long as I thought they would last, and then just had to keep working harder on smaller edges, then betting in the morning into the morning markets rather than the fictional overnight prices.
Yeah, so that was at the age of 20. Do you mind me asking how many years you've been doing that now? I don't know how old you are, Quentin.
Oh, I'm 10 years, decade, just on over a decade now.
Wow, that's some going, a decade as a punter.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. Yeah, it's gone well so far, so long may it continue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, how about the people around you? What do they think about this? I guess sometimes maybe you hear about other people that their parents required convincing that this was a proper job, and obviously your partner needed convincing. All these kind of things come along. How do they take it, and what do they think about what you do, and how do they support you as well through that? Because it must be some highs and lows along the way, surely.
Oh yeah, gambling's a roller coaster ride, isn't it? My wife's very supportive. She understands it. She knows if I'm on a bad patch, then she's there. Oh, you know what? Things will pick up. These spells happen. Look at your prices. Look at your numbers. You beat this by this amount, this percentage. So she understands. In terms of friends, I get a lot of comments from friends in regards to, oh, it's easy work, isn't it? All you do is sit there all day and watch horses, which isn't the case. I know some friends say it in jest, but it's something that really annoys me because the hours and the time that goes into pricing races, looking through races, finding angles into races. By and large, everyone's pretty supportive. And at the start, my mum was a bit like, well, why don't you just get a proper job? But no, proper job's been on the shelf for 10 years. So until I need to get one, which is hopefully never, I'll continue doing what I love.
Exactly. It sounds like your wife has a good handle of, betting from the sounds of it, in terms of check your numbers and go for your stats. And obviously she's a good support there, which is important. And it's great that how, your family and friends do that. I have the same with my friends, expecting, what you do sounds pretty easy. Probably flick on your laptop for 30 minutes a day, place a few bets and log off. But obviously the reality is always very different. You said there about the time it takes, and let's explore that, because I'm always intrigued when I get each different expert on about their process of how you find value and how you start to equate that. So let's say you bet on racing, you've got an average day's race card in front of you. Maybe there's 20 races taking place, however many horses. How do you then start to narrow down to try and find value?
The way I would narrow it down, the start of my kind of process would be to look at my tracker horses, whether it be notes on horses that I don't like, whether they've been there up with the pace in a steadily run race and have won, or the flip side of that, horses that have been in rear of steadily run race and done well to finish where they are. So I'll try and find an angle through my tracker, through notes, whether it be speed figures, time figures, form, I think will work out. And that will kind of give me races to look at. Given the amount of racing there's far too much of it in the UK. You'd like to try and narrow it down as much as you can. So that's generally my go-to throughout the summer months, at least. The winter months, there's a lot more time, so I'll try and pick my way through each and every race, price the race up to 100%, and then pretty much back what's bigger by 5% or so than what I've got on my tissue.
Mm-hmm. And then, so there's a lot of race watching, is it? Or video replays, this kind of thing?
Video replays, time figures. I'll probably watch. I do watch hundreds of replays a day. That's the most time-consuming part, because there's nothing like your eye. You can have speed figures, time figures that will show you some things, but you can't see that a jockey's tugged a horse or buried it on the worst part of the track just by the numbers. So nothing can beat your eye. So race watching is probably the number one part of my horse racing arsenal, if you will. And
what is it that you're looking for when you watch it? Can you give us some examples there? Can you give me some more? What you're looking at a race, often what do you find? Is it a poor jockeyship? Is it, horses that obviously maybe didn't get the break, or just certain things that jump out of you? What do you actually often find and make notes of?
Poor jockeyship, horses that have missed the break, horses that have had wide trips, 4 deep, track biases if it's rained on a certain part of the track. So we'll take Redcar, for example. Throughout the end of last season, the far rail was the place to be. So you can mark up anything that's not slap bang on the far rail. That is better than the bare result. They generally go in a tracker. But the tracker's also good for long-term bits and pieces. You can have horses that are fit, horses that are unfit, horses that are woolly in their coat. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you shouldn't use trackers because it's forcing your opinion on a horse." But there's horses in my tracker that have been in there for 9 months, and I'll have notes like, "Got a soft ground action, need soft ground, can't wait to see this on autumn ground," and then it'll rock up in the autumn. It's got a soft ground action and do better when the mud is flying, but that might not have been something that I've remembered. Well, it wouldn't have been likely something I remembered off the top of my head 9 months down the line. So it just gives me an in into the race.
Oh, it does make sense because, yes, you're not going to remember every small nuance and detail about each individual horse and how they fared in each race. Absolutely. There's so much racing and so many horses to actually cover. But what intrigues me as well, Quentin, about yourself is you're a flat specialist, but you're also able to do very well on the all-weather tracks and courses where I see other people who are very good racing punters actually struggle, like the likes of Wolverhampton, Kempton. Why is it that? Is it, again, just going back to what you're talking about there, or is it something specific that you've been able to pick up from those tracks?
I would say it's kind of, in terms of looking at the race, it's slightly different to turf racing. Turf racing, you don't really want horses that travel really well throughout the race. That they tend to be the horses that are suited to your Kemptons and your Wolverhamptons.
Yeah.
Feel the time aspects of races on the all-weather, given you don't get changes in surfaces throughout the day, that's probably a bit more key. So maybe there's other people that don't base analysis as much on time. Some people say it doesn't matter at all. I'm a big believer in horses that can run fast under a certain set of conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But there's lots of different angles. You get sire stats on the all-weather, so you'll have maybe an Exceed in Excel, which will do poorly on soft ground, but will do fantastic on polytrack. Or an example for this season, our dad had a fantastic season as a first season sire, really good on turf. And he's got about a 3-point-something% strike rate on the all-weather, which is night and day. So some sires do poorly on the all-weather. That's an angle to look for. It's an angle I try to look for. And vice versa. Some will do well on the all-weather and poorly on turf.
Mm-hmm. It gets down to really specialising about the nitty-gritty of the horse, its background, its breeding, all different aspects. So with that specialism and that level of detail, how much time does that take? How many hours in an average day or average week do you spend, whether it be doing your racing research, but just as a whole, in terms of the whole aspect of research and actual bet placement?
Bet placement isn't too bad for me. Found ways of getting on, and we can talk about that later on. The research aspect is the hard part. It's long and tiresome, 12 to 15 hours a day, I'd say, in the summer.
Wow.
The crack of dawn, I don't really stop till the last race, which is 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then try and do some bits and pieces after that ahead of the next day. So I'm in Toronto, I'll generally wake up at 3:20 in the morning, have a quick look through the markets. I've already got a list of horses that I'm interested in, fire them in the email across to the guys at Betting Gods, and then start working my way through time figures and videos from the previous day before moving on to the next day's racing. That's all while trading and getting other bets placed and keeping an eye on the market.
It's a very early start, and like the early bird gets the worm for you, but it's a long day though, isn't it, for you? It really is a long day. And how do you find, this probably goes more to the psychology, how do you find in terms of refreshing yourself and not getting too engaged, I feel like for myself, if I spend too much time, I get too het up in the results and the nuance of a day's betting, and maybe you just need to take a break at times. Do you find that a struggle, or have you got like some patterns in play and some protocols, if you like, to help break up your day and to keep you fresh?
Keeping me fresh, holidays, wine, and helps dinners with the wife. That tends to help just take the edge off at the end of the day. I've been in the gym more than I was last couple of years, just to try and keep the brain ticking over and feeling a bit sharper. I feel that's helped. I mentioned earlier that I'm on a rancid run of form at the moment, but it's one of them runs of form where you feel you're seeing everything well and you're having good bets and they're just not winning. So the gym generally is my sort of thing, wine and dinner.
Yeah. Well, one balances out the other, I suppose. The gym balances out the wine. No, that's really interesting, yeah, because it's part of the pressure of not just your tipping service, but your own betting and the all-encompassing nature of what you do. If you're doing 15 hours a day and you're getting up early, it's a very intensive. It's a hard way to make easy money, betting, isn't it? As someone else said. So that's really interesting. I was going to ask you as well, what, obviously you're doing a lot of the notes that you make and the horses in your tracker. What, if any, study tools or websites, resources do you actually recommend for people looking to do something similar?
I would recommend on the size stats side of things, Proform Racing or a website called Flat Stats. I find they're both very good tools. One's slightly more expensive than the other, but it takes a bit of time to know Proform, but you can do detailed query searches and break down all sorts there. Flat Stats slightly a bit more basic, but if you're just starting out and looking at that sort of thing, you can pull all sorts of details for free on there. In terms of time figures, I've got a guy who compiles time figures for me, but I kind of use a blend between his time figures and Timeform's time figures. And then video replays is just the racing post and racing TV. So they're the main tools of the trade, if you will.
Yeah, I hear a lot of positive comments about Proform Racing. I know other racing judges are keen on that, and obviously everyone uses the different racing videos that Racing Post and others offer as well. So how does that, if at all, change? I know you probably wouldn't be doing much at Cheltenham, maybe you were, but during the big racing festivals, big meetings, do you spend a lot of time prepping for them, or you're more than happy just to focus on the evening card at Wolverhampton?
Cheltenham's slightly different. I did bits and pieces at Cheltenham this year, some anti-post business, which was fine. I think that's a bit easier than your Royal Ascot, just because you've generally got one or two all-weather meetings, and I found the time to balance Cheltenham and with the two all-weather meetings that worked perfectly for me. During the midsummer ones, your Goodwoods, your Ascots and your Yorks, it's a bit trickier because turnover is going to be sky high at them meetings, and it's a lot easier to get bets down. But I'll still try and focus some sort of attention on the lesser meetings, the away meetings, if you will. Just purely because everyone's attention's focused on Ascot, so you can kind of get the ones that slip under the radar. The traders at the firms haven't priced up correctly just because they're trying to get the Ascot meeting correct, and they don't want to be punished there. So yeah, I'll definitely look at the away meetings. It takes a bit more time during the summer though.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I was going to ask you. Obviously, a 5-1 winner at Kempton pays the same as a 5-1 winner at Royal Ascot, and do you actually find during those weeks where you have those big festivals that we had recently at Cheltenham and you got Ascot, Goodwood, all the big events like at York, you find some of the smaller meetings, the bookmakers' eyes off the ball, and they will be putting less, obviously, time and interest into their actual pricing there.
Oh yeah, I definitely find that you get more mistakes. You used to get a lot more mistakes that slipped under the radar, but now I think people have wised up with social media a lot more and now understand that a 5-1 winner at Cheltenham and Ascot pays the same as a 5-1 winner at Ayr or Chester or wherever. So you have a lot of people that tend to just focus on them. So they'll hit the early markets if they see something out of line, and then come the morning, it's in shape. But there's still Ricks kicking around in the morning when the big meetings are on, just less so than there was before. But it's a ever-changing field is gambling, so you've just got to try and adapt.
Of course, yeah. And that segues us, the adapting comment, segues us nicely onto how you get your bets home these days, because as punters, I find the people I speak to, the easier part, if they like, is the actual finding value bets. The harder part is actually getting someone to take those bets. So talk to me about how and where you're able to get your bets on. Is it mostly the exchange? Obviously, your trading business will go on there, but how about your actual bets to win or each way bets or whatever it is you bet upon? How are you getting on?
I'm largely a win-only punter. Don't really remember the last time I placed an each way bet, purely because I find accounts last longer. It's easier to get bets on. You can play around on the exchanges, knocking a horse out and coming back the other side. I find it easier to do just the win-only side of things. So with my tipping service, that's purely win-only as well. In terms of getting bets on, can use the odds checker firms. I've built relationships with a couple of people that help me get on. But I find, given the landscape's changing, there's a fair few firms out there that kind of gone under the radar that are actually happy to welcome business. Like one notable one is MacBet. I use them a fair bit. it's half 8 in the morning, they'll lay you to lose £1,000. At 11 o'clock in the morning, they'll lay you to lose a couple of grand. And if you're nice and ask for more, and they want to take the horse on, then they'll happily lay you more. So that's one good firm I could recommend anyone using. Payout, which is a problem you don't want nowadays, but seems to be happening more and more often.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. There's a genuine bookmaker. You shared that link with me. It's MAC Bookmakers, MAC Bookmakers. I'll put the link in the notes for this particular show. And it's an interesting firm because, okay, you're not getting your extra places or your justice refunds or all the different concessions that are great for many punters, but kind of caused a problem whereby the racing market isn't sustainable. And obviously you've got this restrictions of successful punters. But this is just a pure bookmaker that is willing to run a book and to take genuine prices. And you found them to be good. Is there any other ones you can think of? If you can't remember them now, we can tag them onto the show notes.
I've got a list of them written down somewhere, but off the top of my head, Goodwin Racing, they're a fantastic firm. I couldn't recommend them more either. Like these firms, they're the lesser firms, but they do business properly. They shape a book. They won't just blindly follow the exchange. They'll have opinions. They'll bet to their opinions, and it's kind of what you want to see. Given how it seems to have gone the totally opposite way at the moment, with bookies not wanting to do really any sort of business or take shrewd business on board and then move the book accordingly. So the two off the top of my head, MacBet and Goodwin Racing, they're ones I'd highly recommend. There's other options out there as well. You have WhatsApp bookies, there's brokers that will get bets on for you. They're pretty easy to find in the Twitter sphere who are reliable, and you can do a lot of business through them. So there's plenty of brokers out there, or you've got the Indian exchanges if people are having issues on Betfair in the UK.
Yeah, so there's options out there, and some of them are like the ones you mentioned there, MacBet and Goodwin. They're licensed firms and regulated, and as they are, and obviously there's other ones that are outside of that space that are coming into the equation now because people are having issues with some of the sites, like you say, like Betfair and the source of wealth kind of discussions that are going on and the requirements to prove funds, etc. And some of the recent podcasts I did on bookmakers not paying out, some of the big firms that are being very difficult and not being regulated. Are you seeing an increase in some of these smaller firms, these smaller licensed firms in particular, whereby people are seeking out services like theirs over some of the big odds checker names?
Oh, definitely. There's more and more popping up, and it's not. It may be a lot of firms that have had they've had an on-course presence, but are now taking some business off course because on-course bookies know the deal and they know there's an opportunity there. If you can drum up some interest and get your name out there and you're known to take a bet, the way the industry's gone, people will start to flock to you. And I find with betting, Twitter, gambling, Twitter, you have a lot of people that think they have a clue and think they're winners, or they'll perceive themselves as winners, but they actually aren't. So you'll have them people that they might boom and do this, and they've annoyed a bookie and get their account shut that way. They will flock to these lesser known bookies and do their money in there, which is why they're good to use and why they're popping up more and more, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the majority of people are still not quite as good as they think they are, or their success is perhaps a little bit more luck than skill. But when it comes to someone like you, and obviously you're betting with these firms, I'm curious, I presume your account is net positive for you and net negative for the bookmaker. Has there ever been any issues or discussions with them to say, look, I can't take quite as much, or maybe they'll offer you a lower price than that you're after?
No, there's never been an issue in terms of, I'll speak to MacBet here specifically, there's never been an issue in terms of them not wanting to lay the bets. Occasionally they'll go, you know what, it's tight on the machine, there's 7-2, or we can do you a couple of hundred at 7-2 and then the rest at 100-30, and that's up to me. Normally I'll say, yes, that's absolutely fine, because I know on my tissue and my book, 130 is still a good price. They'll probably take that and then they'll move it to free. So, but no, I've never had any issues at all with them.
Yeah, it makes sense. In many ways, they're perhaps using you as a way to sharpen their book and obviously balancing it out. And they obviously have an over-round, which should actually work in their favour. And it's interesting, like saying a few of them, or the people that you come across there, are on-course bookmakers, whether they are currently also working on-course or just segued to online only, because I know on-course has its issues in terms of the amount of money that goes through some of the smaller meetings, for example, and the expense of having a stall and on-course, a racecourse itself. So in terms of like soft books, do you have much engagement with them? I guess all your accounts in your own name are no longer around, or do you able to get down with them at all, whether online or even in shops?
Yeah, they're sadly long gone. I've got a few people that can get bets on for me with the softer books, with your odd checker bookmakers. So I use them and spread about a bit of business. That's the long and short of it. The family accounts have gone, but just trying to recruit accounts that are long-term losers, or build accounts up by placing negative EV bets to make them look like long-term losing accounts, and then use them to put some more business through.
And I guess betting win only, in many ways, that variance comes from that is in your favour. So you might be taking shrewd bets, but for whatever reason you're betting horses at 5-1, and you hit a losing run with one particular bookmaker, and on a pure P&L basis they look at that and go, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and we'll extend his credit, we'll extend his account for, we'll bracket him as a loser, even though maybe you're beating the SP, the Betfair SP. I don't know if each bookmaker does that. Do you often find that you get that where variance does play in your favour?
Oh yeah, of course. You can have the occasional one where your first 3 bets are winners, and then you're put into the other bracket and you can't get anything down. But if you go on a losing run with one account, then yeah, you're kind of extended and the account lasts longer. So a losing start always helps, but it can't always be helped, can it?
No. It's hard to know what you want, isn't it? Sometimes. Do you want to start off with do you want to be cheering for losers? Probably not.
It's all variance. It's the luck of the draw. It's not something you can predict. You can predict it, but you can't predict what's going to land on what account.
No, absolutely. So when it comes to some of the stuff, I don't know if you've heard some of the recent podcasts we've done or explored some of the recent content on like the gambling law changes and even bookmaker complaints. So do you have a take on how you'd like to see the changes apply, or how can the racing industry kind of rebalance itself at the moment? Because it's almost squeezing both ends, squeezed VIP losers to such an extent that we have this problem gambling issue, and then squeezed people like you and other people, much smaller winning gamblers, that they can't actually get on. What's your take on the industry as it stands, and do you have any ideas of solutions or what you'd like to see implemented?
The industry's in a tricky place at the moment. Racing's kind of let these quango groups get their claws in, and you're seeing the whole gambling industry under pressure. They kind of brought it on it themselves by not dealing with things sooner. But now, in terms of racing itself, racing relies on people losing to fund the sport. That they either need to ask for more money or need to change by maybe trying to set up some sort of racing exchange. Like they've got the tote in France. I'm not saying the tote's the answer. You could have lots of free data, all these free videos on the BHA site, and then bet through the BHA, British Horse Racing Authority, with the money going back into racing. Is anything going to change short term? Probably not. But I think long term there has to be change. I wouldn't say I have all the answers, because I don't have all the answers. But it's kind of racing needs to get itself together and get the house in order and kind of take a stance and say our product's worth more than this to you.
Yeah. So our product's worth a lot more than just as an entry point to get you to go and spin in the casino, for example. No, that's interesting. Yeah. Are you fearful? Obviously, you're someone that relies on racing. Are you fearful for where it may actually go in the short term, especially?
Short to medium term, no. Long term, definitely yes. You've seen the amount of people that, apart from your Cheltenhams and your big festivals, race course attendances are dwindling. You go to Lingfield, there's Lingfield on an afternoon, there's one man and his dog there. Mm-hmm. The exchange liquidity's gone down for one reason or another on horse racing. That's probably to do with the amount of counts that CLVs and being checks that are being put in place. So yeah, I'm very fearful for it long term. Short to medium term, I think it's absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. But long term, I do worry for the game.
Of course, yeah, you're not the only one. But let's move on and talk about, though we've alluded to it through this conversation, your tipping service, because you're one of our Hall of Fame racing tipsters at Quentin Franks racing service. Obviously, you bet to win only, and you've been going since 2014. Tell me about the service and why you set it up, and then we'll maybe explore some of the other aspects of it.
I set up the service. Well, the service is a win-only service. It's about 1,000 odd selections a year. I think I'm approaching 10,000 bets across the last 8 years or so. It's a win-only service. It started out 10:30 win-only selections. Then I kind of moved it to 9 o'clock, 8:45 in the morning, just because it generally suited customers better. Customers that wanted selections before they worked and didn't have the option to pull their phone out in the office and try and get bets on at 10:30 in the morning.
Well, how much time does this take to oversee each day? This is just obviously a selection of your own best bets each day, I presume?
Yeah, be my best bets in the morning that I find. Occasionally, if there's anything else that pops up, maybe before 11 o'clock, then I'll send out an additional email. But it's my best bets at 9 o'clock in the morning. In terms of overseeing the service, the Darren at Betting Gods, he does all the overseeing. He does the marketing. He's in charge of bringing the customers in, deals with all the result sheets. So I quite literally pop an email across and they send it out. And yeah, that's the overseeing aspect of it. Occasionally I'll get messages, whether it's DMs or emails from customers asking bits and pieces or advice, which I'm more than happy to speak with and talk to. So apart from that, there's not masses to oversee apart from the general sending of the email part.
Yeah. And it's got a great record. I don't know if you have the figures in front of you, but it's one of those services that has stood the test of time. You've been around, like I say, for, I think this is the 8th year then, if it's been going since 2014. And you don't often find many services with such longevity and also longevity in terms of profit. And how about the challenges of running it? I guess odds movement continues to be one of the biggest issues with prices going in, even if it's your customers or presumably you're not the only person that spotted value in a particular horse.
Yeah, long term it's 15.35% return on investment, which I think is fair. I'm quite happy with that. Could be better, could be worse. It's on a bit of a losing run at the moment, but variance and things will swing around. Yeah, like you said, the odds movement is the most frustrating part. At the start, it was like, oh, people are backing my horses. It's nice to see people kind of respect your opinion, but that egotistical side kind of goes very quickly when you find the odds are moving and some customers find it harder to get on, or there's other customers that can't bet till 10 o'clock. And then it's a case of, well, do they bet? Do they not? I did briefly put in like a minimum price that should be taken in there. But I found the Betfair board would be wiped from, say I put a horse up at 10-1, minimum price of 13-2. The board would be wiped from 10-1 down to 13-2.
Yeah.
And then, as you well know, automated software with the bookies, that price is only going to 6-1, 11-2. So I felt that probably wasn't the right thing to do. It isn't really a solution that I've managed to find in regards to odds movement. It's just one of those things. I actually wish there was a solution, but I want everyone to try and get on it at the best price possible or as near to the best price possible.
Yeah, it's a tricky equation to solve. I got one approach that some people take as they tip later, but then, maybe you could have got 10-1 at 10 a.m. and now you've taken 7s because you've waited a few hours. What's the best approach on that front? Because, yeah, bookmakers are going to be sensitive to winning accounts and, of course, more sensitive to ones taking better earlier prices, but there's still going to be an issue if you're winning on a regular basis. So in terms of the other challenges, I guess the variance side of it, how do you find you get DMs? Do you get regular criticism? Do you are you fearful every time you open up Twitter if you have a losing day?
Not really, to be honest. See, the thing with tipping, and I missed it at the start. One of the reasons I set up the service was I thought I could provide something that would be good for people, and it turns out I could. It was also a good grounding for myself in terms of you're providing information for others. You take that much more time and detail, and you want to make sure people aren't losing money on the work that you've put in. So you don't cut any corners at all. Well, me personally, I don't cut any corners at all. I can handle variance better in my betting just because I know it's variance. I know I've got my SPs, I've got my prices, I've backed that. So I know the tide will turn. I know the hard work I put in. And if I'm seeing things well and things aren't just going right, whether it be a poor ride, nod of the head this way, a horse getting chucked out of the race in a steward's inquiry. Long-term customers have kind of ridden the roller coaster. They've seen the ups and downs and they know long-term things will swing around. Occasionally you'll get the people that have just started up, whether it be on the back of a hot run and some promotion has been sent out about how good the service is and they've joined, and then you've gone a few days without a winner and they're like, well, is this 8 years worth of results fake? What does this guy know? And you can get snide comments from some people. There's a comment section on the Betting Gods page. I don't tend to look at that. Just purely, whether it's win or lose, I don't tend to look at that. I'm happy for people to interact with me in my DMs if they want to. I had a gentleman last summer, again in the middle of a bad run. He DM'd me saying you should move back, stop following this Canadian racing, get off your high horse and get back to what you're doing. And I said to him, like, I've worked the exact same hours, the exact same process, whether I'm living in the UK or here. pointed out some of the things that had, whether it be a horse that got kicked out at Royal Ascot at a big price, pointed out some of the unlucky events, and he apologised. He said, like, I had a few too many drinks. I'm sorry, and he was nice about it. But yeah, the comments can be shit and they can get you down at times. But I've got thick skin now at this stage.
Yes, of course. I think you certainly need to always brings to mind like football management. You know, you're only a couple of games away from the sack, and you're only a win away from being the best manager ever and winning Manager of the Month award. It's almost like when the marketing emails go out, and it's like the curse of the Manager of the Month award, isn't it? And you're due to have a losing run or have a bad game or two subsequent to that. And but I guess having that longevity of service is something that you can always point to. And it sounds like as well that you're able to encourage people along on the journey, and no doubt you've helped many punters that have come to your service, and you know, maybe they've not seen winners straight away, but with your encouragement they're able to ride the roller coaster, if you like, and then maybe the next bet they get is one that wins in a photo finish.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice when things go smoothly for people from the start, but that rarely happens. As I said, a lot of people join on winning runs, and after winning runs come losing runs. Like I was chatting with a friend, and we were talking about just betting services and tipsters in general, and we came to the conclusion, if someone's got a long-term track record there, unless you know something significantly has changed in their life, then the best time to probably join them is when they're on a losing run, because they've got a long-term record, and after a losing run will come a winning run at some stage. So that was our thoughts on it.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that as well, because I find, you know, in the end, the quality rises to the top. The skill overcomes the luck, and you start to see, you know, that take place. And I can think of many services, not just yours, but others which are Hall of Fame, are very good services that just go through losing runs because there's no avoiding losing. And actually handling losing is a really key component of becoming a professional. No doubt you'll be able to talk more on that yourself, learning to not to get too down when you have a bad run, or also to from it sounds like you keep copious notes, and you're able to compare to your SPs, and you're able to just double check your work to make sure that, you know, you didn't take some shortcuts or miss something quite obvious. So I guess that provides you that reassurance during such bad runs that, you know, you're still on track and you just haven't had the rub of the green recently.
Oh, definitely. I think the SP ones are key, because maybe even not, you probably don't even need a massive log of SPs, but you generally know deep down if you're working well or if things are just going wrong because it's unlucky and it's not through hard work. The thing with like the hard work, I find if you don't work hard, so I don't work hard now at the start of the flat season through March and April, that will come back 3 months down the line and bite me in the arse then, because I haven't got them notes on them horses, and I'm now trying to go through 50 races a day trying to find angles, rather than doing the hard work now, continuing to do the hard work and having copious notes in the tracker for when horses come around in June, July, August.
Yes, there's no substitute for that hard work. Even in the quiet times, you still have to invest all that time in research, absolutely. So any plans for the future? You know, anything likely to change, or is it going to be just adapting as you need to in terms of getting your bets down as the market might change? Any other plans at all? Anything else in the works?
Yeah, the tipping side of thing, I'm as long as I'm happy doing it, I'll keep doing it, and there's customers there that are happy with the service I provide, then I'll keep doing it. In terms of getting bets down, more shop business, I think. There's a few people for some shop business, yet to use them, but they're reliable because I know them from personal experience. But a lot more shop business I'm going to try and do this flat season. That's something I'm putting into the works next week or two. It's been a long time coming. But yeah, shop business is what I want more of. And just try and keep turnover high. Turnover's key. There's no good having 1 or 2 bets a day or 1 and 2 bets a week. You've got to keep turning over money in this game.
Yeah, it's true. The more volume you can put down, I guess that would, the more value you can find, the quicker you'll churn through into a profit. So how can people find out more about yourself? Obviously, Betting Gods has got Quentin, your service, and we'll slide the link in for that. But how can people find out more about you and get in touch?
Best way to get in touch is Twitter. It's at Quentin Franks 14. Drop me a message there if you have any questions or queries or just want to chat about racing. My DMs are always open. So anyone can drop me a message there if they want. And in terms of the service, it's on bettinggods.com/Quentin Franks, I think. Quentin Franks Racing. If you want to have a look at the long-term figures and profit and loss charts over time, and I think there's about 8,500 results for you to sift through if you so wish.
Yeah, there's a lot of data there for those people that enjoy that kind of thing. I know I do. I was looking at it just the other day, enjoying exploring it. I think we're talking about doing a fresh look at your results because we continue to report on it, but we're going to have a fresh dive into it, see if we can pick out some angles of interest as well. So yeah, thank you ever so much today. I feel like I've learned a lot, especially from your own approach. We're independent bookmakers, they're really interesting, and the amount of time and effort you must put in is substantial. Every time I speak to people, it's always the same. People that are successful in this industry, that they have to put in the hard yards. There's no substitute for that, absolutely. So thank you ever so much for today, and I wish you all the best for the coming flat season. And I hope the variance that you're enjoying at the moment comes to an end soon.
Cheers, Pete. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.